Hey people, I was actually watching a film, but just as I was watching that film, I was browsing for YouTube videos, and I came across something that happened in Philadelphia, and I was so pissed off by it that I really felt like making this video, whilst the thoughts are still fresh in my mind. Basically, there was footage shot of a Philadelphia police officer punching a woman. And I'll pass a link to the video so you can see for yourself during the Puerto Rico Day Parade in Philadelphia. Now what happened was, obviously it was a carnival type atmosphere, and there was a guy a few meters away from the police decided to throw some water in the air, which was a bit silly, but anyway, some of that water hit some of these Philadelphia police officers, and one of them seemed to turn round, and then a woman happened to be behind him, and he must have presumed that it was her that threw it. But this guy then turns around, punches the woman on the jaw, then proceeds to arrest her, drags her away. There's clearly blood coming from her mouth. And obviously there's been an uproar about this. Not only was this mistaken identity because she didn't throw the water, but it's just disgusting behaviour. Now, apparently this police officer has 19 years experience. He's a lieutenant, actually. 19 years experience. And he'd been commended before for bravery. I don't know what he'd done before, but there was absolutely nothing heroic about this scene. It was an act of a complete coward. You know, even if she had thrown the water, there's still no excuse. If she'd thrown the water, then he could have just given her a verbal warning, told her to move on. But are these cops so sensitive that they can't handle a bit of water, and he has to punch a woman in the face? What an absolute pig. It makes me sick. And, you know, America's not a fair society, and neither is Britain, where I'm commenting from, because you can guarantee what's happened so far is this guy's been put on desk duty. But if he was any other American citizen, he would have been arrested for assault. And that is exactly the same in Britain. You know, if a British citizen assaulted someone, they'd be arrested, and rightly so. If a cop assaults someone, then at the very most there'll be an investigation, they'll be put on desk duty. I am so sick of police brutality. I am so sick of these bastards abusing their power. And yes, I know it's not everyone. I'm not talking about every single individual in the police, but there is a hell of a lot of police officers who seem to think that wearing a uniform gives them a right to do as they please. And I would say that cop is a fucking coward. I'm sorry, but I'm really angry about this. You know, to punch a woman on the face, a small woman, this is a big guy, 6 foot or so. You know, it's just disgusting. And like I say, if she had even thrown it, which she didn't, he could have just given her verbal warning. It's just told her to move on, something like that. But she was innocent. And I've seen this many times. Obviously, the United States has a long history of police brutality, but we aren't exactly squeaky clean in the UK either. In recent years, there's been a number of cases. To quote one example, during the G20 protests in London in 2009, there was a man who was a newspaper vendor, Ian Tomlinson, was walking home, trying to get through the crowd of protesters, and a police officer shoved him to the ground. Now, he didn't kill him, but that has been that directly led to the guy having a heart attack. And the police made lots of excuses and tried to cover that up. The family are absolutely outraged at the acquittal that's just occurred. Now, people say that was a fair trial. It wasn't a trial by the police, there was a jury and so on. But the point is, the police withheld evidence. And the coroner, I believe, in that case had been struck off several times. So the case was riddled with flaws. It wasn't showing the whole, which was basically, I think, protecting the police. I'm so sick of these people thinking that they're above the law. And it's a threat to democracy. You know, this is more like the sort of thing that you would expect in a one-party state, rather than democratic countries where there should be rule of law, where everybody should be equal under the law. But you have these cops thinking they could do as they please because they're wearing a uniform. And I'm not talking about every police officer. I've met decent police officers who don't abuse their power. And it must be hard for them because they realise that the overall reputation of the police is being dragged through the gutter with this sort of behaviour. I think it's disgusting, but I also find it shocking that there's so many people who defend them, because it's this mentality that because they wear a uniform that they therefore must have the moral high ground or something. But abuse of power is abuse of power, and there's absolutely no glossing that over. And I don't think a demotion is enough. I think they need to be arrested in the same way anyone else guilty of assault would be arrested for questioning. And if found guilty, they should serve the same sentence as anyone else. But in the UK especially, the police can get away with anything, pretty much. And it makes me sick. Now I know the police often face very challenging circumstances, and I do want to be sensitive to the fact that there are scumbags in society who will target the police. And for example, recently in Manchester 2 police women were killed, so I don't want to be unsensitive to the pressures police face, and my sympathies go out to their families. But I'm talking here about the very legitimate issue of police power, and that is a legitimate issue. If politicians raise this issue, then the police accuse them of putting them in a corner. But I would say those politicians who do raise the issue are just doing the decent thing. They were elected to represent the people, and if people are concerned about police brutality, and the MP represents that, that isn't somehow abandoning law and order. This should not be a triangle. It shouldn't be police versus public versus criminals. It should be police and public working together against the criminals. But at the moment, the public don't trust the police because of these cases of brutality, and because they do think they're above the law. A lot of cops do think they're above the law. And for another point I'd make, I don't think police should have special privileges. I don't think, for example, a crime against a police officer should carry more serious consequences than a crime against anyone else. By all means, people, if you assault a police officer, you should face the consequences. But it shouldn't be any worse than if you assault someone else, because that indicates that these people somehow are a privileged class, and they're just not. They have chosen to get into that job. They know the challenges involved, and they've no damn right to abuse their power. It really makes my blood boil, because I've seen this so many times, and I've seen people make excuses for it. And for anyone saying, oh, but if you're in trouble, you'll phone the police. Yes, I will. But I'm not here to say that they are, they have a specific job. They have chosen to get into that field. Their job is to tackle real crime, not criminalise law-abiding citizens who've done nothing wrong. Not to abuse their power. I mean, is it so damn hard to ask that the police just focus on the real criminals, i.e. people who are legitimately a problem to society, instead of taking easy choices? Or making excuses like, I guarantee you a lot of police will take the easy option of, for example, focusing on what they perceive to be a rowdy protester rather than a gang of thugs who are terrorising a neighbourhood. There's clearly something not right here, and it's a big, big problem in Britain, it's a problem in the States, and it's a problem in many countries. I've seen it in Canada, I've seen it in many democratic countries. I don't think there's any police force in the world that is completely innocent of this. The Scandinavians probably have the best record, but I think this problem can be seen the world over. Is it so damn much to ask the police to just focus on real criminals instead of, abusing their power and taking out on people who really haven't done anything wrong, or exaggerating the remit of their power, abusing that power whereby, let's say someone's been a little bit rowdy, instead of just maybe arresting that person or verbally telling them to move on or whatever, they will beat them to a pulp. This has happened before. And I'm not naive, there is the other side whereby police do have restraint and they do get challenged by thugs. So I'm not just one-sided. I know the police get challenged on occasion as well. And I'm not one of these people who say we should never trust the police, etc. But it is becoming increasingly hard to trust the police when when they do this sort of thing, they seem to be above the law. And you know, if a male police officer was to strike a female friend of mine who'd done nothing, no force on earth would stop me beating that guy to the ground. And I don't care if I get arrested for it. Because, you know, that's not the action of a hero. That's the action of a pig. And I sincerely hope this thug is made to feel the pressure. I mean, if this was a fair world, he would lose his job tomorrow and then face charges. But that won't happen. At the very most, maybe he'll get a slight pay deduction and desk work for a month. Because the Philadelphia Police Department are too damn cowardly to take this thing seriously. And if they want to prove to the people of Philadelphia that they're on the side of law-abiding citizens and not on the side of criminals, then they have to prove that they will not tolerate this sort of behaviour from within their own force. And it isn't just the Philadelphia Police Department. I've seen it in other American police departments. I've seen it in British police departments. I'm not saying that some forces are better than others. Some forces, for example, within the northeast of England where I live, I don't think this is particularly bad. I've never seen major police abuse in this particular region, but definitely the Metropolitan Police in London have a reputation for thuggery. Kettling is a good example, whereby in a protest situation they will actually kettle an entire group of people, which is, in my opinion, absolutely unjustified, in order, they argue, to maintain control. But in doing so, that's collective punishment of anyone in the vicinity, including people trying to get home. Now, what if there's someone in that crowd, for example, who has health problems, who needs to get to an asthma inhaler, whatever? You know what I'm saying? It's a dangerous situation. It's undemocratic. It's dangerous, and there's no justification for it. And I am sick and tired of these police chiefs making excuses for this behaviour and thinking they're above the law. And I have respect for any politician that will stand up to them and say, look, we're not going to tolerate this. We expect you to fight crime. We don't expect you to brutalise the population. You don't have a remit to do that. You know, police say they have their hands tied, but I would argue they're the ones who are making excuses. And I'm so sick of it. I know they face pressure. I know their job isn't easy, so I'm not trivialising that. And yes, I would contact them if I need help, because that is their job. That is their damn job. And I would appreciate that help if it came. But, you know, as a free-thinking citizen in a democracy, I believe it is vital that we speak out against this, because it is a threat to democracy. And it really sickens me. And any decent police officer out there would agree with this. Any decent police officer would acknowledge this sort of behaviour is bringing their force into disrepute. You know, I know individual police officers who would never condone this, and I hope they can get their voice heard. But quite often, you know, the police, like any organisation, has its bad apples. And quite often those individuals will bully others into silence. And it's also a very macho culture, which is why women police officers who face harassment and so on find it very, very difficult to bring forward those sort of issues. The police have come some way in addressing racism, I think, but they still have a big problem with brutality. I'm not talking about every police, but there is a trend here, and it's a very big problem, and this is a good example of it. And I just hope public pressure forces this guy to lose his job, because he deserves that. I don't care what he's done in the past. This action was utterly unforgivable. To punch a woman in the face who's done nothing wrong, he should definitely lose his job and face charges. Okay, that's a rant over.